Welcome to the third and final day of the 7th Agri4D conference. So it's been very exciting the past 2 days. We've had a lot of roundtable discussions, panel discussions, and we've heard from a lot of policymakers. So just by way of recap, to remind ourselves what we already know, to remember, I'm sure most of you remember the discussion on agroforestry, where we focused on different aspects of the food systems, tackling challenges across the value chain. We also focused on the importance of having different stakeholders. It's not just the farmers, but also all the other stakeholders, including policymakers and practitioners. And we heard about examples of making food systems more resilient, which is very much in line with the theme of this conference, which, as you remember, it is that we want to make food systems more resilient in uncertain times. And on the panel on agroforestry, we heard about agroforestry not just in Africa, but also in Asia. So these were very good examples of a low to middle income countries context, which again is the focus of this conference. Yesterday, I managed to join one of the sessions on gender and human rights and the use of indigenous local knowledge and how to have more robust governance systems. All of these things are very central to having resilient food systems. And the intersection for me really came out very strongly that usually we have to talk about increasing biodiversity, dealing with climate change, and then looking at the governance systems. And also we know that it's very important to zero in on the local context. So we cannot apply everything across the board, but whatever lessons we learn from one project, we contextualize it. This to me is really what this conference is about. And all these interventions ultimately will lead us to achieving zero hunger, which is SDG number 2. So today we'll continue with the same topics. And my name, once again, is Bridget Walia. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Zambia. I'm also a fellow of the Food Systems Research Network. And joining me to co-moderate are Matthew and Elaine. Please welcome.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Hi, good morning. I'm Eileen Torres Morales, and I work as a research associate at the Stockholm Environment Institute, where I am mainly focusing in the intersection between energy systems, and I am interested in also how agricultural systems are connected to that. And then we have also Matthew.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew Kessler, a science communicator and food systems podcaster at Table, working at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. We are the co-moderators for today, and our job is to ensure there's a smooth connection between our live studio and the online audience. If you're posting about the event on social media, so on X, formerly known as Twitter, or on LinkedIn, please use the hashtag Agri4D.
And we would like to remind you some housekeeping for our last day of the conference. Please, if you face any trouble inside our platform for the conference, which is called Envio, don't hesitate to go to the support button that we have there, because we are having support live that can help you to get through any inconvenience that you're having in the platform. And we would also like to remind you that we have some different rooms, both mingle rooms and exhibitor rooms. And in the exhibitor rooms, then you can chat with our partners and even have live conversations with them through video conference. And you can also chat with other colleagues that are attending this conference in the chat function, as well as in each of our sessions, you are able to chat or ask questions in the Q&A with the keynotes and the panelists. So we just invite you to use our Q&A function. It's on the right-hand side of the platform to ask your questions during these sessions. As well, you can upvote questions that you like. So that's a way that you can interact with the keynote and the speakers we will have here with us.
Yeah, and we have this very interactive platform, which you can also visit the exhibitors booths. So we have 10 different exhibitors who have information about their organizations and their projects, and you can check them out, and you could also speak with the people who are leading or representing those projects. You can also watch the recorded sessions from the past 2 days. Our team has been very quick to already upload them. We hope you watch all the sessions today, so you don't go ahead and just skip those and go back to the last sessions, but know that those recorded sessions are available to watch. And well, as Eileen said, we'll keep track of the questions. So any questions you have for the panelists or to the moderators, we'll relay them to the panel chairs. And now back to you, Bridget.
Thank you very much for that, Matthew and Elaine. So just like the past 2 days, we're going to give the platform to our keynote speakers. So if you remember, on the first day, we heard from Dan Smith, who talked to us about peace and security and climate change and food security and how these three interact. And yesterday, we heard from Betty and Sima. They talked to us about using whole grain meals, basically improving nutritional security. And we heard about a case from India where Sima talked to us about how they're using agroecological principles to help women farm better. So we'll continue along that tradition today, and we're going to hear from 2 keynotes. So after the 2 keynote speeches, then we'll invite questions from you, and we really encourage you to interact with us on this. Then we'll forward the questions to them. So our first keynote is Professor Appolinaire Djikeng, and he is Director General of the International Livestock Research Institute. And as you know, this is one of the big research organizations. So I invite you all to listen to him for the next 10 to 15 minutes. Thank you. And welcome, Professor.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm very happy to be part of this conversation. And today I will be talking to you not necessarily or only about the International Livestock Research Institute, but I want to frame my remarks around the CGIAR and highlight our efforts moving forward, how we are looking at 2030, and also how we see the next 50 years playing. And it should be here looking into 2030. And the theme is very appealing to the sort of things that I would like to talk about. So the CGIAR is about 50 years old now, a construct that is that has a global footprint. As you can see on this slide here, many organizations belong to the CGI systems, and essentially covering the global, having a global footprint. And some of the institutions, all the institutions are listed here. On this, I think we are very proud to say that the CGIAR has a very unique offering, and it has a global and a unique niche. About 10,000 staff, 128 nationalities, presence in 90 countries and all the continents. And we are really focusing on transformation of the food, land, and aquatic food systems in the climate crisis. So again, within the CGIAR systems, we would like to see the world through some of these sub-regional organizations. In terms of we interact with country-facing, farmer-facing organizations to ensure that innovations and transformation initiatives driven through the CGIAR will land very strongly in countries and also in communities where we experience current challenges. And a bit of impact, as I mentioned to you, the organization is about 50 years old. And on this slide here, I would like to highlight some of the achievements that we have generated. About the world half wheat land now is covered by some varieties generated through the CGIAR systems. And you can also see on this slide that the orange flesh sweet potato has been really a transformative instrument in terms of nourishing people with good quality and good quantity food across the world. And there's many more that you can see here. What are we trying to do now? We're trying to build a nexus, bringing the power of science, technology, and innovation together. And we want to do this in the context of building resilience to the climate change that we face at the moment. And this is a little bit about the science, the research and innovation plan that we have for the CGIAR. And I want to highlight three things. Our ways of working are really calling for strategic alliances. And on this, I want to acknowledge the contribution that SLU has done globally, and more importantly, interacting with the CGI system to deliver some exciting innovations that we can be proud of today. We also want to leverage digital transformation to ensure that we use the latest technology in terms of data collection, communication more globally to ensure that smallholder farmers are not continuously isolated. And the third thing I want to highlight here is really around the 5 impact areas through which we would like to score our impact. Essentially looking at nutrition, health, and food security, poverty reduction, livelihood and the jobs, gender equality, youth and social inclusion, climate adaptation and mitigation, and finally, environmental health and biodiversity. I know that this week there's been a lot of conversation about biodiversity, and we would like to ensure that the biodiversity that we continue to enjoy, and particularly in the global south, will remain, and that we can maximize on it to ensure that we build resilient food systems. And how do we connect our work? If you look at the left here, you will see the United Nations Food System Summit action areas. And we've connected our 5 impact areas to ensure that as a community, we can score against similar milestones. On the next thing here, let me now focus on what the CGIAR is trying to do moving forward. On this circle here, you will see that we have 3 main science areas: system transformation area, the genetic innovation science areas, and the resilient agri-food system science area. I'm very proud to be managing the resilient agri-food systems, and that's the topic that I selected today to ensure that we can look at building resilience through this means. And essentially, we're trying to achieve 2 main things: ensure that farm and landscape are integrated, and that we can build technical and socio-economical solutions to focus on resource-poor smallholder farmers. We cannot stress this enough because the smallholder farmers, particularly in the global south, continue to hold responsibility of producing about 70% of the food that we need. And transforming smallholder systems is just the right thing to do at the moment. So once again, I want to come back to these 5 impact areas to ensure that as a global community, we can talk about the same thing. We can score against the same scorecard. If you look at the slide that you have here, poverty reduction and livelihood and jobs is really an area that is very important for countries in the global south and also for countries in the global north. Nutrition, health, and food security is really becoming a significant challenge, particularly in the current climate, which is very vulnerable, but also many other externalities that we need to control. Gender equality, we know the role of gender in this thing. You can have the best innovation, but if you're not inclusive, bringing gender dimension, this is not going to work. The climate adaptation and mitigation is the main currency that we are trading on at the moment. And this is also another impact area that we hold very strongly for our work. On this slide here, I also want to highlight some of the work that we've done in terms of impact. If you look at Nigeria, Climate Smart Valley, low-cost participatory approach resulted in 94% increase in rice yield. Imagine this kind of impact in a country with close to 200 million people. And we can say very similar things in terms of bringing some of the CGI innovation for maize production in sub-Saharan Africa. And also in Ethiopia, as you can see here, making sure that crowdsourced seed could benefit up to 1.3 million smallholder farmers. And amongst those, 53% were women. And in terms of livestock, we have really we have made sure that we drive three main important innovations here. For those who are very familiar with the Horn of Africa, you know the climate vulnerability, where we have built a financial de-risking system to ensure that when farmers lose their stock, there is a means to restock it through some financial payout. And the poultry and dairy genetic improvement are also considerable impact program areas where we have been very active in Eastern and Southern Africa, and making sure finally that our work is connected to policy in a number of countries, including Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Nigeria, and the Gambia. Finally, on this slide here, you would see that the gender dimension has also been considered very seriously. I wouldn't spend time here talking about this, but looking at countries like Nigeria, Uganda, and Kenya, looking at some of the commodities that are listed here, we've been very active in this area as well. And looking at 2030 with optimism is really what I would like to share with you, that from the CGIAR, we stand ready and very proud to be interacting and collaborating with organizations like SLU, and looking into the future with optimism that we have the right partnership, we have the right strategies, and we have the right constitution in terms of our research power, connecting to ensure that impact is actually delivered. So let me thank you all for giving me the opportunity to take part of this conference, and I will stay online to answer questions if there are any.
Thank you, Professor, for that insightful presentation. We'll come back to you for questions. Please stay online. So for now, we hear more about agroforestry, and we move to Wangu Mutua, who is the Deputy Regional Director for VA Agroforestry based in Nairobi, Kenya. She has vast experience spanning over 20 years in rural development and working on topics such as agroforestry itself, but including food security and local partnership engagement. And for today, she will talk to us about the project that they are running and hopefully speak to the themes that you are interested in here. And please remember to ask questions. So welcome, Wangu, and please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My presentation today is more of a reflection coming from practicing side, from development side. It's always interesting listening to researchers and the different new knowledge they churn out. And for the organization I'm working in at Agroforestry, our work is to take this new knowledge and see how then does it relate to practically being used by farmers. So I am coming from Agroforestry, and we work with farm organizations in East Africa where we support them to not only develop their own capacity as organizations, but at the same time being able to use that in a way that they can benefit their members on the ground and eventually lead to all these results that we are seeking to get, be it increasing food security, increasing the yield, and all that. I have a recorded presentation, but before I play it, allow me to say something about the strategy we are on at Agroforestry right now. We are focusing on specific result areas that I also invite you to partner with us. That's on stronger farmer organizations. We're also looking at enhancing biodiversity, climate change mitigation and adaptation and resilience, increased food nutrition security, and as well as sustainable and resilient livelihoods. And within all that, we also have advocacy actions looking at these thematic areas. With that, allow me to put up my presentation, which is more a reflection, inviting all of us who have been participating in this Agri4D this year, more to take a personal reflection on what does this mean, and how can we all be part of improving the situation and how things are as we speak. So it's more of an invitation to reflect together. So I'll play the recorded presentation. Thank you. It is always an honor and a privilege to listen to researchers as they share new learnings and insights that support us in improving our programming for sustainable results. My name is Wangu Mutua and I work for VI Agroforestry, otherwise known as Skogen. We are a Swedish organization working in East Africa, and this year we are celebrating 40 years since our inception. I've been following some of the sessions during the last 2 days, and today being the last day, I thought I used the time allocated to me to invite you to reflect with me the broader picture of food systems and indeed together look into what exactly can each one of us do to make things better. We have listened to presentations informing and educating us on how we can build resilient food systems. I was especially intrigued by the dry landscapes focus, as I know from the region where I am based that this is a crucial focus given the millions of people impacted by drought, climate change, and what this means in terms of their food security and livelihoods in general. From this chart, which I tried to put together, you can clearly see that there are many moving parts that are key to, when looking at the food systems, maybe even more. This list could go on and on. But my main message this morning is to call to each one of us, be it researchers, academicians, development humanitarian actors, donors, governments, you and me as individuals, everyone. We can all do our little thing for greater impact in relation to building resilient food systems. Right from environmental sustainability, worker scarcity, biodiversity loss, socioeconomic challenges, globalization and trade, technology and innovation gaps, policy and governance, culture and dietary preferences, food loss and wastes, whether it's during production or during consumption, education and awareness for everyone. The list could go on and on. But we can all do our little thing for greater impact in relation to building resilient food systems. And I am reminded of the famous hummingbird story by the late Nobel laureate herself, Wangu, and I invite you to watch this story with me, as can only be retold by herself.
We are constantly being bombarded by problems that we face, and sometimes we can get completely overwhelmed. The story of the hummingbird is about this huge forest being consumed by a fire. All the animals in the forest come out and they are transfixed as they watch the forest burning, and they feel very overwhelmed, very powerless, except this little hummingbird. It says, I'm going to do something about the fire. So it flies to the nearest stream, takes a drop of water, and puts it on the fire and goes up and down, up and down, up and down, as fast as it can. In the meantime, all the other animals, much bigger animals like the elephant with a big trunk, could bring much more water. They are standing there helpless, and they are saying to the hummingbird, what do you think you can do? You're too little. This fire is too big. Your wings are too little. And you're big, so small. You can only bring a small drop of water at a time. But as they continue to discourage it, it turns to them without wasting any time and tells them, I am doing the best I can. And that, to me, is what all of us should do. We should always feel like a hummingbird. I may feel insignificant, but I certainly don't want to be like the animals watching as the planet goes down the drain. I will be a hummingbird. I will do the best I can.
And with that, as we come to the last day of Agri4D, my question to you this morning is, what are you committing to do to the best of your ability? So next year, we can all look back and celebrate together that we made a difference. I thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's my reflection mode presentation, but I remain online to engage with the questions from participants.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And yes, indeed, it's a challenge to all of us. No matter how small we are, we can always do something. Yeah, so now we go to the question and answer session. So I think let me start with Professor. There's a question for you from the audience on what is your view on the future of livestock in the Global South? And as an organization, what are your research priorities to harness potential benefits, but also to address what they call the long shadow of livestock?
Great. That's a very good questions. Let me start by saying that we should first acknowledge the importance, the role that livestock plays in our communities as a means driving people out of poverty, income generation, nutrition, the first 1,000 days for any person on earth, needing proteins and stuff. So that's the good side. But we also acknowledge that livestock production doesn't go without an impact on the planet. Our work is really focusing on ensuring that we have sustainable livestock system, that we have efficient production systems, that we address the climate impact or the environmental impact, the livestock impact on the environment, but also try to ensure that livestock is not impacted by climate change as well. So our work focuses on better animal health, animal welfare, better nutrition, and also genetic improvement, ensuring that we have resilient animals for our production system. Essentially, ensuring that we work closer to making the system much more efficiently. But let me finish by saying that livestock in Africa is produced from 3 main production systems: the pastoral systems, that you could see in the Horn of Africa, we have up to 70% of the animals holding in the country in that production system. We have the mixed crop livestock system, what you'll see in smallholder farm, generally in any part of Africa. And then we have the semi-intensive system, something that you'll see in the peri-urban areas of Nairobi, for instance. So in the pastoral system, in fact, sustainable livestock development there holds great promise for carbon sequestration, restoring biodiversity, and also providing means of resilience to rather millions of people. So I think livestock really must be part of the solution for all the challenges that we face, including climate challenge. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that comment. And Wangu, I come to you now. I think you mentioned that in your organization, you try to sort of translate the science so that it is useful to farmers. I'm just wondering on how you do this. I think we know that as scientists, we generate a lot of technologies. We have a lot of research. We know a lot of things, but not always in a form that is useful to farmers. And this engagement between science and practitioners is not always very good. So I'd like to maybe hear from you on how you go about doing this.
Thank you. What we have done is we work very closely with or interact a lot with the material that is generated from the science side, the researchers. Yeah. Some research organizations actually also partner with us when they're doing participatory research on the ground. And what we do is we then translate this information into practical manuals and guides, and as well train or support the farm organizations in training their staff, extension staff, and all that. And together we are able to unpack the information and the knowledge in a way that is understandable at the local level. This could also at times include even doing practical field schools, so that on ground you can translate what does this jargon actually mean in reality when I, as a farmer, am interacting with the soil on my land. So these trainings then becomes very important to see the practicality of what is coming from the science side, which is important for the new knowledge to be useful in the long run to the communities.
Yeah, thank you. So Professor, I come back to you. You had mentioned digital transformation, and I'm imagining that this would be very useful in some contexts, especially where there's access. I know of a project at least where farmers are able to use their smartphones to get information on how they can make feed for chickens and things like that. So I was just wondering, like, how inclusive this is. Is there a risk of some farmers being left behind because they don't have access to such digital technologies? So maybe just a reflection from you on how we can make digital transformation more inclusive.
Yeah, digital transformation is an important tool and means to get information to smallholder farmers, but it shouldn't be the only one. So it's just one approach. But digital transformation is something that we have to encourage because it cuts down the barriers and the blocks of from using other means of communication. So as I mentioned, we use that as a tool to incentivize farmers who could actually even invest in having that technology. And we have seen that in countries like Kenya, Tanzania, and Ethiopia, where farmers are incentivized to use mobile technology to provide meal recording for their dairy cows. And in doing that, in return, they can get support and advice on what to do. And they also record how many times a vet has come to see the animal, when the animal gave birth and things like that. All that information we store in a database, and that we can then use to customize information and advisory services that we provide to smallholder farmers. Back to your question, if we use the digital technology as the only way to reach farmers, we could be inclusive. But we have to use that as a mean in combination with others. But again, try to encourage farmers so that they can use it and have information in real time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. So then a question to you both on, as you know, increasing resilience is one key topic in this conference. So I'm just wondering, from the work that you do, what could we do? What could all the stakeholders do to increase resilience in the systems that you work with, whether it is livestock or agroforestry? We start with Wangu.
It's a lot that can be done because it's number one. I think at times maybe at a global level we might be on the same page in terms of, yeah, we need to increase resilience. But at the local level, what does that mean? The context at the very local level could be very different. There could be some that are experiencing maybe more droughts and fewer rains than expected. There could be others who are on the other extreme end, facing flooding situations and things like this. So the fact that the ability to produce food is being disrupted, that I think needs to be looked at. What does it mean in terms of where the communities are? What exactly does that mean? Because you might find in instances where, for instance, dietary preferences might be, like in the Kenya situation, maize is one huge thing, but there could be maybe other foods that can be grown in the situation that we are in. If maybe the millets and the sorghums can do well, but how are people accepting these other foods that are readily available? So that could be a whole workshop by itself in terms of what can be done. But it's at policy level from, of course, the new information we're getting from research people. It could be from individuals themselves and the preferences that they are having. So I don't know if I am able to answer your question fully, because it's a lot that can be done in terms of being able to increase resilience.
Yeah.
And for me, my focus is at community level, smallholder farmer level. It's a lot.
Yeah, I think what I hear from you is that context matters. So we're not going to have like one solution, but wherever you are, how can you adapt? And I think as we learned from COVID-19 that we don't always know what the big unknown is going to be, but the idea is to look at what is relevant for that context. So the same question to you, Professor. How can we increase resilience? Maybe in your case, in livestock systems.
Well, let me try to state that we have to always define resilience to what shock. I think there are many shocks that, you know, when we say resilience, we can say at any given community, country, or region, we can define the shocks and then build means to withstand those shocks. It could be climate change, it could be market vulnerability, it could be infrastructure degradation, it could be political instability, all kinds of things that you can imagine. I think for us, as you mentioned, context really, really matter. You have to bring resilience or definition of building resilience to a specific community where you're interested in doing that, and use a participatory approach, experience from the past to identify the key shocks, and then build means to withstand some of those shocks should any arise. And I think that's the core principle on how to do that. At the country level, some countries are building food transformation initiatives. If you look at the food transformation initiative in a country and really go deep into the analysis, you can identify some of the shocks. And then based on what those shocks are, you can then come up with some means. It could be research, it could be new innovation, it could just be building resilience by creating storage places and increasing the infrastructure and things like that. And also connecting production to market, because if there is no market and you put for so much production, it could also destroy the system. So resilience really has to be defined very carefully, and this is where we should avoid unplugging a solution in one place and making sure and trying to push for it to work in another place, because the context may be different, infrastructure may be different, the communities could have different connections and linkages to the market. I'm going a long way to say that when we mention resilience, let's make sure that we try and define the shock for which we're trying to build resilience.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So I have a question from the audience and from Lanre Rotimi, and I think this is one of our most active conference participants. If there's an award for active participation from the audience, it should go to them. So this is a question. If we are to implement food system transformation, using sustainable solutions, for instance, linked to achieving SDGs, the Paris Agreement, and the Addis Ababa Action in both North and South countries by 2033 to 2035, how would we do this? I think we heard a few days ago about how when it comes to reducing hunger, the numbers are still high. There's a gap between where we want to be and where we are. So how would we do this to fill this gap? Yeah, that's a question. Either of you can take it up, or maybe we start with Wangu.
I could attempt, and maybe I would give it the approach as Agroforestry how we are working. We believe in local solutions, and that's why our programming is anchored on supporting the local organizations, defining what are the pain points for them from where they are, and what are the gaps that they see, and then we see then what can we do together to address those issues. So it makes sense at their level, and that way they're also contributing then to the global goals. But if it doesn't make sense at the local situation, then it's a problem. It's an issue. So for me, the solutions have to be to make sense at the local level and locally led, and ensuring that indeed that the communities are taking lead towards this, and of course making the people who are supposed to be doing things accountable. If the governments are supposed to be making commitments a reality, what they have said that they are supposed to do it. So if everyone is accountable to the commitments they have made, I think we should be seeing steps in the right direction. But the question is very complex in many ways, but that is the simplest way I can think of. Trying to respond to the question.
Thank you very much. So, Professor, and I think on the first day we also heard about the dialogues going on around the food systems dialogue, and I think we heard that a lot of countries made commitments. So it could be at national level or at regional level, but also as individuals. So just following the same question to you, Professor.
Yeah, so I'm very glad to hear these questions, but also linking that to some of the things that I'm seeing in a number of countries. In Kenya, where we are located, the government is really pushing towards establishing the food system transformation initiative. Similar thing in Ethiopia. With that in place, any intervention or all intervention should then be aligned with that transformation plan. I think that can help convert and consolidate and even synergize interventions. But at the global level, whether it is in Africa or globally, we have the Sustainable Development Goals. We're looking at 2030. I think they create a very important framework that we can then use to really consolidate and demonstrate how much progress we are making. And in Africa and the Africa Union Vision 2063, and the CAADP agenda and investment in agriculture, all those are constructs that we must use to ensure that we are consistent on the message, and also that we are using similar parameters to measure our action and correct if the action is not being taken.
Thank you for that response. So we have a question from the audience from Mitiku, and the question is, how can we estimate the role of agroforestry in biodiversity conservation and carbon stocks and food security? So maybe the agroforestry, Wangu?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Again, I go back to the example at Agroforestry. We actually do have some carbon projects where there are methodologies that exist with the different standards that allow us to be able to look into the carbon stocks and what that means. At Agroforestry right now, we are also looking into how can we estimate the biodiversity or the contribution from agroforestry towards preserving biodiversity. And I'm happy, I don't know if my colleagues are somewhere in the room, but we are actually just about to commission a study looking into how our contribution as agroforestry and the work that the communities are doing, what does that mean when it comes to biodiversity or preservation of biodiversity. But what we see is things like the species that are there, the types of the diversity of trees that people are planting, that farmers are planting, the connection to wildlife and all these. We have communities that are actually neighboring, say, national reserves and all that. So it's a lot of interface that we see. Does agroforestry has a role towards preserving biodiversity? Absolutely, yes. The how, this is something we are looking into keenly, and from the study, I hope we will be able to share the outcome of the findings of the study to see how exactly does this look like in reality.
Yeah, thank you very much. So a final question to both of you in 30 seconds. what would you want to see policymakers do to make your work easier? I will start with the professor.
Well, policymakers are critical for the work that we do. If they don't come up with the right policy, our work will have no impact at all. I would like to see policymakers connect to scientists, not just come to us when there is a problem, come and learn on a regular basis so that we can take them along with the sort of intervention or technologies that we are creating. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Wangu?
For me, I think it's about keeping the promise. It's one thing to have beautiful policies. It's another thing to see the reality of those policies coming to life. So keep the promise.
Okay. Thank you very much. We've definitely learned a lot from both of you. All the best. Thank you. Thank you. So we remember the hummingbird. You're never too small to do something. For now, I hand you over to my co-moderators, Matthew and Elaine. There you go.
Thank you, Bridget, and thanks to both of the wonderful presentations, and thanks to the audience for asking such great questions. I really like the note that we ended on, which was the importance of collaboration and the importance of accountability in making food systems more resilient. So before taking a break, we'd like to spend a few minutes here to introduce a few activities for you to participate in. Just like the previous days, we have one final Menti quiz question for you. So the Menti question is something that you can access through the QR code on the screen. You can also visit the homepage where there is a link to the same address. So now is a good time to scan this so you can enter the website to access this quiz question to answer. And the question is this: how much food that is produced globally is wasted, and what part of the supply chain contributes most to food waste?
So I will just count and enter to the Menti. I will take a look into the different options. So is it A, 25% of food is wasted, mostly at farms? Is it B, 19% of food is wasted, mostly among retailers? Or C, is it 17% of food is wasted, mostly in households? Please answer without Googling. We know you will do a great job by answering this question. So go ahead, scout the Menti, and please vote. We will have the Menti open during the day, so you can vote now or also any time before 3 p.m. And for those of you who would like to have the chance to win the quiz of the day today, that it's the last day of the conference, we invite you to please go to our chat function. You can find that in the left-hand side menu and answer our question of the day. So for the past 3 days, we have been having a daily quiz. And today, the question is, should food systems be more globalized or localized? What do you think? Give us your answer, and Matthew and I will be taking a look into your responses and selecting the one that will be winning a gift today as the most creative and the most complete answer. So please stay tuned so that we can share with you which is the answer that is the winner for today at the wrap-up session at 3 o'clock today.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing from you. What should food systems be more localized or globalized? And now it's time for a short break. So right before the break, I'm just going to introduce the parallel panel sessions that we have for you. So there's Unlocking the Potential of African Continental Free Trade Area. There's Smallholder Farmers, Knowledge and Perspectives. There's Renewable Energy and Supply Chains, which I imagine Eileen will be visiting. And also Agricultural Production. So you'll find links to the parallel sessions on the program page. And as always, you're welcome to join the mingle rooms and chat with other conference participants and visit the exhibitor booths. And the panels will begin in 15 minutes. So please enjoy the break.